Well, hello and welcome to the episode called Sarah Fixing Her Hair.
I
I like how you got that bit in at the beginning. I just kind of threw this on her. I said, "Hey, by the way, why don't you jump in and record this like about 1 minute before we recorded it?" So this is officially, what episode number is this, Sarah? I'm going to ask you.
Oh no,
You're the producer. Come on, produce a number.
this
Give me a number.
214.
214. It is episode 214. So this is a special episode, which is by and for our sponsors. We've had four real core main sponsors this year, and then one additional one that kind of popped in for a few episodes. Um, I will tell you, so all four of those core sponsors are included in this podcast. We wanted to hear directly from our sponsors. Basically, what do you think about the State of the Union? Where do you think we're headed as an industry this year? And, really gratitude, like just to thank them. I keep saying it, but without sponsors, if I had to do all the work myself without the lovely Sarah, and also, without even having the bills paid, because it does cost money to produce a podcast, whether you know that or not, it really does cost money. And so, I mean, really, the sponsors make it happen. We're very happy. We're very proud. We're very grateful for those sponsors, especially, and I hate to call out any individual sponsors, but Elation and ACT have been with us since the very beginning of this podcast 4 or 5 years ago. Very supportive. We're very appreciative for both of them, but for everyone. And so also, Sarah is actually reaching out to a bunch of new sponsors right now because we're planning to add, I think, 2 to 4 new sponsors this
Yeah.
year. And that doesn't take away from or devalue or water down the sponsorship value. It actually, we're changing how we're representing sponsors and making sure that, I think you've seen recently, especially with Sarah coming in, she's stepping up social media to present those sponsors and thank them and everything else. So anything
Yeah,
you want
there's
to
gonna
add?
be more, basically. Yeah, there's going to be more of everything.
Yeah.
When sponsors come on board, we want to be seen every day. You may get sick of us, but we want you to see us every day, and we do want to show our appreciation to the sponsors.
Yep.
And even since I've what just over a month now, I've been on board, and the everyone's been so lovely to me. They're sort of responding to me, all the rest of it. So it's been fabulous. And then when we came up with this idea for this podcast, Marcel was like, yep, let's do it. And
Yeah.
again, we've got everyone on board. So it's great for everyone to see them as well.
No, this was your idea, and it's a great idea because the conversations I've had so far with 3 of the sponsors, and we're about to do the 4th one right now before this gets published next week, I guess. And so,
Oh,
yeah, great idea. We're going to continue doing things like this, calling on the sponsors for more information. Getting people who work for those sponsors to come in and talk to us, not because we owe it to the sponsors or anything, but because they're all interesting people. I mean, if you think of who our sponsors are now, you've got, Eric Loader at Elation and the rest of the people at Elation, Ben Saltzman at ACT and the rest of the people at ACT, Mike Cannon. Everyone knows Mike Cannon. Dan Anderson we had on, or Daniel, sorry. We
yeah.
had on this episode as well. Great guy. So yeah, I mean, we want to hear from these people, and it makes for interesting chats.
And to be quite honest with you, from these chats, I think that we'll end up doing like a whole episode, because everyone's chat was so good and it wasn't just about their businesses, it was about everything. So,
Yeah,
what's the
yeah,
space for more? Well, there
yeah.
are loads more.
Well, I mean, again, if you look at, you know, these chats that you're about to hear here, basically roughly 20 to 30 minutes per company, 4 companies. Very different companies. 2 are what you would probably call rental companies. One is a dry hire rental company, very large one, Mainlight. The other one is a small regional rental company, primarily focused on commercial or industrial events, corporate events, and all just very, very different answers to leading manufacturer slash distributors, who are both, multi-$100 million companies, not small companies. And so to get everyone's viewpoints is just really fantastic. And I'm glad we shoved
And
this all into one episode.
you are forgetting Brad as well from Gear Source.
Ah,
You can't forget
yes, we
poor
do
Brad.
have the
There's
the
five.
lovely Brad. I keep forgetting about Brad. Yeah, there's 5. Well, I try not to give too much credit to Gear Source, even though it pays most
I
of the
know,
bills.
but you should.
Yeah, it pays most of the bills. So yes, there is Gear Source is our 5th sponsor. I keep forgetting about them. So yeah, I mean, let's just go ahead and get these talks started. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Well, hello there, Mr. Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well, Marcel. How are you?
I'm great. Merry Christmas, buddy.
Merry
Are we
Christmas.
allowed to say that? Yeah, we're allowed to say
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
We're both
Absolutely.
Christians. How'd it go? This is being recorded on what we Canadians and Europeans would call Boxing Day. Well, I guess Brits too, because they're no longer Europeans, supposedly. Which I argue with my girlfriend about that all the time, by the way. She says, no, we're still Europeans. We're just not part of the EU. And I'm like, well, isn't that Europe? But yeah, that one's to
It's
be
good.
continued.
Christmas is good. It's different now when your kids get older. It's not as exciting as it used to be, but
Yeah.
it's just good getting the family together. We're gonna see the rest of our family for New Year's, and then
Cool.
I got to play golf, so that was always fun.
Well, there's a shocker. How many rounds have you played since you closed up office?
No, just one. I hurt my back
Wow.
a little bit yesterday, but I did some therapy. I feel better today. So
I hurt my back every time I play golf. It's got something to do with swinging way too hard and thinking I'm Tiger Woods.
yeah, no, I don't think it was the golf that
Oh,
just getting old.
yeah. Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard to do anything anymore, like without tons of pre-work and after work. And, because like skiing, I've been skiing since I was 7, 8 years old, I think. And I ski pretty well. But now I'll do 1 or 2 runs and I'm dead. I'm like ready for a hot tub, and I don't know what to do about it. Like, I guess I could do skiing exercises for 3 months before I go skiing for 3 days. But the problem is, most of the friends that I ski with up in Canada, they ski 100 days a year. I ski 4.
Can't keep up with them. Yeah.
No, you don't have those muscles anymore, or they just don't stay as fresh as they did when I was younger. Like when I was
Hmm.
even 40, I could go skiing 3 days a year and have no trouble. Yeah, I'd be a little sore the second day or whatever, but I get it, believe me. So you've got your daughter back from England, from college in England, so that's got to be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. It's she's doing good. She's ready to enter her second semester, I guess they call it, or whatever there, and it's exciting. So she's
Yeah,
happy. She's doing well.
and it's not like kicking her ass. It's not like way
No,
way too hard.
it's interesting. Actually, the load, it seems like the first semester workload was very mild, and they
Hmm.
kind of told her, "Listen, we're going to start you slow, but second semester, she's got 2 more classes, and things really pick up." So
Yeah,
I think it's good. I like that they start, especially when you're studying, internationally. It's a lot of change, right? So, but I
yeah,
think in general, I think for college kids coming in, they all like to party and go out and drink and do all that stuff. So they get that
yeah.
out of their system first semester, and then okay, time to buckle down. And
She hasn't introduced you to her new British boyfriend yet or anything?
not yet, not
No.
yet.
Well, that's good. It's
So
coming.
yeah.
It's coming, Pop. I'm sorry, but it's coming. All kids grow up, unfortunately. It's nice. I think we talked before we started recording, or maybe just when we started recording, about how it's changed, and it's very much the
Mhm.
same for me. Like the present opening ceremony was very short, and
Mhm.
then he's gone off driving his sim in his
Exactly.
room or whatever, and or dealing with his friends or something. So yeah, it's just not the same. It used to be a whole day event. Now it's 10 minutes and gone.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
except for meals when they get hungry. Hey, I was going to ask you, and this is more to talk a little bit about the industry and stuff, but I wanted to ask you, I saw on social media recently the St. Louis Arch had been
Hmm.
lit by some Proteus something or other. Proteus, which one?
Brutus.
By the way, have you listened to my bloopers yet?
Yeah, I listened to that.
You
I know
bastard.
you love our Proteus series.
Oh my God. What you guys
You
have to
can
do
play.
is before sending me those promos, read them out loud. Like just read
Well,
it out loud. Pretend you're
we say it every
recording it.
day. We say it every day, so it's easy for us. So
Yeah. Yeah.
no, there's
Sure.
a 76 Proteus Brutus now permanently installed at the St. Louis Arch.
Okay.
They turned it on last week or yeah, maybe 10 days ago now. And you remember Michael O'Keefe from
Yeah.
TPI?
Of course.
So he did the project. He a year ago he came to me and said, Eric, you got this new light that's 70,000 lumens, and I think it'll work great on this project. Can we do a mock-up? And I said, sure. So in November we went and did a mock-up with 6 units last year, and you know it showed it to the committee that's in charge of the Gateway Arch
Yeah.
and the designer and all that, and they were impressed. They were
Yeah.
impressed. So as most things do, it takes a while to get done, and
Yeah.
finally got installed, and it looks great.
So a couple questions. One, I mean, I'm assuming that this became a much easier solution than the alternatives, which, we both know in the past would have been some sort of either xenon or
Yeah,
metal halide or something that
yeah.
obviously wouldn't do some of the cool things that you're doing. And then part two is, what kind of cool things are you doing? Like, they're not just sitting stationary in white, are they?
Well, for now they are.
Yeah.
It because it's a national monument. It literally takes an act of Congress to make any change to how you light it.
Yeah.
So they have done different things in the history. They've lit the arch up for years with different technologies,
Yeah.
but they would put gels on the lights, or they would do different things. But now obviously LED's finally bright enough to do this
Yeah.
application, and of course the lights can do a lot more than what they're using them for.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of experience now, having maintained a lighting system there for however long.
Yeah.
They know what works and doesn't, and the
Yeah.
fact that they are automated fixtures helps them park them in a position where birds don't go on the lens, and
Shit.
vandals, and exactly,
Yeah.
vandals and different things. So I think they've you know let's see how it goes. But they'll be able to do a bunch of cool stuff when they turn it on every night. It actually fades up. They've controlled it where it fades up and fills the arch in the 30-second time sequence. So that's
Oh,
really
that's
cool.
cool. Yeah.
So for people that want to go there and kind of watch it turn on, it's instead of just kind of dimming up
Yeah. I
as it
would
did
guess at
before.
some point that they will probably like allow companies or people or uh, associations to like either bid for or request color, pink for breast cancer and those types of things.
Yeah, I think national holidays would be on the table, Fourth of July, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and maybe for certain causes.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll commercialize it necessarily, but
No.
because it's a national monument. But I think the fact that they went from 7,000-watt fixtures to 1,200-watt fixtures, they're saving a lot of energy, and I think they just the flexibility they'll have with the system now is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Well, I remember when I provided an LED package to the Miami Tower. One of the earliest things that started happening is companies, the Miami Dolphins, like sports franchises, movies. So I remember Bad Boy, I think it was Bad Boy 2 or something, wanted the building a certain color for a certain scene of the movie. And they charged an enormous amount of money to just like go doink and change the color of the entire building, right?
Yeah, it'll
So,
be interesting to see if, like, the St. Louis Blues or the Cardinals, or
yeah,
one of the sports teams will want to get it colored if they're in the World Series or whatever.
right.
So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens, and
It just comes
it's
down to how
exciting.
conservative,
It's
how
one of those
cons-
projects for me that I was happy to be involved in the beginning. Michael came to me. We've known Michael for 20 years plus.
yeah.
I think we took him. Did we take him to Denmark? I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
But we've known Michael a long time, and the fact that he came to me, and
Yeah.
you know my team, we went and did it, and we got the deal. And
Well, the
and
fact you
it's
had a
like
light
it's
called the Brutus probably didn't hurt.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, Brutus has
It
to
needed to
say,
be a
"Hey,
bright
this
light.
thing's badass." Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
it needed to be bright. How tall is the like center point of the arch?
Without going to Wikipedia, I think it's 650 feet or
Oh,
600. It's up there.
Jesus. Yeah, it's tall.
Yeah. And
Wow.
all the lights are mounted underground in these kind of pits that you have access to and all that, and drainage and pump systems and all that. So it's pretty cool. The lights shoot through these metal grates, and there's some on the west side. I think there's 48 fixtures on the west side, the St. Louis side of the arch, and then there's
Okay.
28 fixtures on the east side, which is the Illinois side of the
Hmm.
arch. And so pretty impressive. Pretty impressive thing to see.
Yeah, that's very cool. Congratulations. That's a cool project. I mean, we're getting older. It's one of those ones that you look back and you go, I remember that, and it'll pop up in your memories every
Mhm.
year on Facebook and you'll post it again. I mean, anytime you light that iconic a building or a monument, especially like that one, that's a proud moment. That's bigger than just a job, right? You've
For
sold
sure.
bigger
For
jobs
sure.
than 72 lights, but probably not
Mhm.
many bigger than this from a standpoint of, just what it means, right? So it's cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank
So
you.
I have basically a few questions that I'm sort of asking everyone, all of our sponsors. So you're obviously, first of all, thank you very much for being one of probably our very first, if not one of the first sponsors of our podcast, and
Mhm.
stuck with us through thick and thin, through COVID, through all kinds of things. And we appreciate you. We appreciate Elation. And I always enjoy having you on the podcast, of course, even the one time where you had to record it twice in full on your 50th
On,
birthday.
on, on my birthday, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which I will never
We
forget,
will.
believe me. You talk to me about stories that I repeat, and that's definitely one of them because it sucked. That was terrible. So
Mhm.
yeah, but so speaking of 2023, sort of the results in our industry, like what our industry looked like, would you say that 2023 was better than expected, worse than expected, or as expected?
Well, I don't think any of us expected a lot of the events that happened in 2023. Going into the year, I think we were all very bullish. 2022, I think for everybody was a record year because of all the pent up demand,
Yeah,
uh, because of the shutdown and COVID and all that. So 2022 is one of the years that will be the new. It's going to be how do we get back to that level? I think going forward because there was so much pent up demand. I think we were
yeah,
all hopeful going in. We were all hopeful going into 20. Oh, we're going to grow 10%, 20%, 23. I mean, I'd be surprised if many companies, unless you had a standout product or finally got to delivering to a, maybe you didn't deliver as much as you could in 22, and now you're delivering in 23. Um, but for us, I think we would have been happy to be flat this year or up a little bit. Um, and we're just below that, but overall for us, it's a good year. So
yeah.
we can't, especially when you consider, there's two wars going on. There's the interest rates. We had the film TV strike, which was a big gut punch to a lot of
No
our
kidding.
industry.
Yeah, we
I mean,
forget about
some of
that one
ours,
already. Well, some of us
yeah,
do.
the manufacturers that really focus on that market, I think, took a big hit this year.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Elation, we're pretty diversified into a lot of different verticals. So, yeah, it affected our business. But,
What about Ari?
we,
Like with the timing of buying
I,
Claypacky and then boom, all of a sudden that happens. Ay, ay, ay.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you have to have a strong stomach to weather. I mean, it's almost another COVID type event for that industry
No
because
kidding.
it shut down. It shut
Well,
down. And
in some sense, worse. I mean, I don't know. Like in some sense, worse because it's completely shut down. Yeah,
yeah.
crazy.
Well, there was some stuff still happening, game
Yeah,
shows and things that didn't need a lot of scripts, but the film industry, they had a lot in the can from 22, so I think that, that's why it lasted so long. But now they're back, and I think that'll help us next year.
yeah.
I think interest rates. We expected a lot of people to still invest in 23, and I think the rental companies started to realize, whoa, money's a lot more now. and we're just going to try and use what we can. We're going to, keep our commitments on purchasing what we plan to purchase, but we're not going to go crazy this year and buying, right?
Well, and add to that, the fact that they had to start paying back the cheap money that they got during COVID. The timing was during this year that most companies had to start paying that
Right.
money back, and there was a lot of debt taken on by our industry at that time.
Well,
So
a lot of people had purchased in 22 for the 2023 tours, right? So
yeah,
a lot of the buying we saw last year was actually for business this year, and all
yeah,
the big stadium tours that were out there that had thankfully a lot of our lights on it. That stuff was bought in 22. So
yeah, yeah. I don't know. Did Matthias or you or somebody see this all coming with these crazy number of stadium shows, or was that just incredibly good luck that you happened to have an outdoor, very bright fixture
no,
or
I mean,
series of fixtures?
designers, came to us a few years ago and said, listen, especially after COVID, more and more shows were going outside. People felt more comfortable going to shows outdoors.
Hmm.
So because of our Proteus range, we knew that, and we had seen a lot of success on Proteus Maximus in 2021, well, 20 not, but 21, 22. I think we knew that there was more appetite for big outdoor fixtures, and Proteus Hybrid we launched in 2017, and so we've already been on the market for 5 years with that product, had a lot of experience, so we just grew that line. LED again got bright enough to be now in an outdoor fixture,
Yeah,
and we still have discharge lamp. We just launched the Proteus Hybrid Max, which is the evolution of Proteus Hybrid, and it's smaller, it's brighter, it's faster, it's less money. So I mean, the technology's caught up now. 5 years later, 6 years later, almost, that you know the discharge lamps are still viable for beam hybrid fixtures, but everything else is LED, and
yeah,
the tours have benefited from it for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
The big
no, it's an
ones.
interesting point, and I mean, for sure, Elation went hard and heavy on IP stuff. I think before pretty much anyone else did, like where you had sort of a full range of product before
For moving
anybody
heads,
else did.
yeah,
Yeah,
moving heads. I mean,
yeah,
give credit where credit's due. SGM was the first to push it that
right,
envelope,
yeah.
but I think we were able to. They were LED and it wasn't bright enough, so we went discharge and it was bright enough, and we then LED caught up.
So now moving on to 2024, same questions. Your expectations from the industry, not necessarily Elation's business, because I know that might be secret or whatever. But do you anticipate growth? And if so, what sort of percentage? Is it going to grow by 10%, 5%, whatever? Is it going to drop, or is it going to stay flat for next year?
I mean, I think we're targeting growth next year. I think, with interest rates supposedly starting to come down, it is an election year for us here in the U.S. It doesn't really affect the rest of the world, but I think it'll be an interesting year from that perspective. There'll be a lot of, um, money spent on that.
Yeah,
I think the TV film business will be back. There's been a lot of investment coming into this industry. If you follow, the PIF, Saudi, they've invested into the Live Golf, or they've invested into Live Nation. They've invested
yeah.
in entertainment. I
They
see lots
like
of
the space. Yeah,
lighting designers are flying back and forth to Saudi all the time from Europe or from the US. So there's a lot of investment going on in entertainment. So I would expect the industry to do well in 24.
yeah. That's another great point. I've been in talks with a UK based financier who is very anxious to invest in a startup that I'm about to get started on here, and we've been talking a lot about specifically Saudis who are extremely excited about the live event space and especially the technology side of it. And so
Yeah,
that's been an interesting talk where they're just like, hurry, we want to give you our money. How much can we
hmm
give you? And of course, you have to show good growth and everything else, but they're
for
very
sure.
excited for our industry, and that's a good sign. And
I mean, look at the F1 thing in
yeah,
Vegas, and
crazy.
I mean, Vegas is just unbelievable. The amount of growth that's going on there, and it just doesn't seem to stop. And the city seems to be handling it pretty well.
Yeah. Well, except for F1. F1 kind of broke
Well,
the city for a few weeks. Yeah. It
but
made
it'll
it
be
pretty
better next
messy.
year. But
Yeah.
the whole sphere project. I mean, just everything going
Yeah.
on there. That
Hey,
it's pretty cool.
speaking of Live Nation, did you see the article, Rapino, with the I don't remember the exact numbers, but he was talking about how artists now have 10 million followers. And he says his job is easy because all he has to do is sell tickets to 5% of those followers, and he sells out an entire tour. And I found that to be a really interesting, because that's where he's showing his growth is coming from, tapping harder into those artists' social media platforms.
I haven't seen that article, but that totally
I'll send
makes
it to you.
sense.
I'll send
Totally
it to
makes
you. It's a
sense.
really
Yeah,
interesting article. Really interesting. I mean, and again, maybe they're just looking for incremental growth or something. I don't know, but I never looked at it like that. Like, there's just so much more capacity, and there's such a hunger for live music. And
hmm
he also looks at it as streaming being a part of that. Streaming plays a role, but most people who are following somebody on social media are really excited to get out and see them live, and I think that's a good trend for our business as well.
for sure, for
And
sure.
then finally, give me a prediction. Give me Eric's big thought for 2024, a product trend, a market trend, or even the Beatles or Led Zeppelin are getting back together. Uh, and both of those bands are going to run out of players soon, so they better hurry. I guess if AC/DC can do it with like one or one or two originals, uh, probably Led Zeppelin and the Beatles could as well. But so yeah, anything?
Well, I think I went to a show at a House of Blues not too long ago, and I think the small shows are going to come back. Because going to a big stadium tour, you can only afford that, once, twice a year kind of thing to take the whole family. But I think you can afford going to a house of smaller venue shows. I think are going to make a comeback this year, and it's lower cost for the production. There's lots of benefits for these artists. So I think that you've seen the casino shows, the indie casino tour bands, and all that kind of stuff the last couple of years, and that's done well for us as also. But I think the smaller venues, I think we'll see a comeback on those. The nightclub business, also has not been amazing the last few years. And I think we'll see some of that start to come back too.
Hmm. The smaller shows, I think, have been happening. It's just we've been paying so much attention to the big ones. But like as an example, the Hard Rock here, which I guess would be a middle-sized show, the Hard Rock
Yeah.
Live, or whatever it's called here, the live venue at the hotel. Um,
hmm
but that place is booked constantly. Like, they're buying every artist that comes anywhere near Florida. They're buying it, and there might be 4 concerts a week in that place sometimes, and like more than I've ever seen at any venue. So maybe
Yeah.
that's a little
Yeah.
larger than what you're talking about. You're talking House of Blues size, small
Yeah. I'm taking,
theaters.
3,000 and under,
Yeah,
small venues. I mean,
yeah.
that's where my daughter wants to go see shows there. She doesn't want to go see shows at the stadiums.
I kind of agree with her. I'd much rather see a band in a small
hmm
venue. And
hmm
the problem now is, though, that it's such a cash grab for the bands to do these 360 deals with Live Nation and do the bigger venues, sell as many tickets as you can, as fast as you can, and selling into a smaller venue. You're going to get the up and coming acts, the new acts, which is probably what's more interesting for her, anyways.
Yeah, but an up and coming back act can explode so fast now with Spotify and all
Yeah.
these other channels.
Hmm.
Um, so it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Cool.
I think that'll be a trend.
And
I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited to see Van Halen. I'm excited, to see if some of the older bands get together and go out. Sammy Hagar,
Van
Van Halen.
Halen.
It's going to be cool.
Oh, you
Yeah,
mean the
Sammy
Sammy
Hagar.
Hagar one? Although they
Yeah.
they got kind of a gut punch with the whole. I don't know if you saw the Satriani thing where he butchered what song was it? Unchained, I think. And and just got slaughtered on social media
Mhm.
for it. You know, everyone was like, "Oh my God, Joe, what are you doing to this song? You've destroyed it."
Mhm.
And he came out and acknowledged, "Hey, I did a pretty bad job. I'm back into guitar lessons now, figuring it out." You know,
Well,
because
they're going to
obviously,
rehearse. They're going to rehearse and polish it for
yeah.
sure, right?
Well, they did it
So,
live on like I think it was on Howard Stern or something, and yeah, it just didn't go well at all.
I mean,
So yeah.
I don't know if like NSYNC is there's rumors about that, and
Oh,
there's other
really?
bands that'll get together.
Hmm. Interesting.
We'll
And
see.
bonus question, not only have you been a sponsor of ours since the very beginning of time, but you've been a listener. I mean, you were one of the first listeners too. You've always been very kind about sharing your opinions with me, even when they're not so kind. And I appreciate that, by the way. But I always have liked that you've got a long commute to work. I'm sure you don't like it as much as I do, but
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
often listen to the podcast and then you'll either call me or send me a text when you get to your office or something. And you'll say, "Hey, this was really good. I liked this. I didn't like this," or whatever. Who would you like to see spring on Geezers of Gear in 2024? Anyone?
Well, I mean, like we talked about Michael O'Keefe earlier. He might be a good one to talk to. He's been in the business a long time and
Yeah.
comes kind of from a different part of our industry than the rock and roll side that I think we tend to focus more on.
Yeah.
Um, but I think yeah, I don't know. I love hearing designers. The designers again. They manage so much uh, politics and relationships, and not only with their customers but with their vendors.
Yeah.
And I think the designers really offer you. I'd love to hear more designers for sure. I mean, I know
Cool.
that you always folk try. They're all so busy. That's one thing I will say about LDI this year was I saw more designers this year than I've seen in a long time, and I think it was the timing of the end of the
Yeah.
year, but also
Show
the
being a bit
Sunday,
later.
Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So I think that was the designers really came to LDI this year, and that was the best part for me of LDI this year.
I've
Was
heard they're
seeing all
booked
of
for
that.
the same dates or the same basic weekend or whatever, or weekdays
It's the
or
following weekend, but yeah, it's a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but it's the 8th, 9th, 10th, I think.
yeah.
Don't quote me, but I think it's something like
I
that
think you're
instead of
right.
the third, fourth, or sixth, third, fourth, whatever it
Yeah.
was.
No, I think you're right. I hope they keep it there. I mean, it seems to be a little easier. I always hated sort of that week of Thanksgiving. Uh,
Mhm.
Actually, it worked out great for me because I'd go straight from Vegas up to Canada, and it was a really short flight to get up to my house, and I'd go skiing for a few days. And it's not Thanksgiving in Canada at that time, so the ski hills are empty, and so it worked out really well.
Yeah,
But
most of the designers, are working so hard, and people in production are working so hard leading up to Thanksgiving and even into Christmas. A few of our customers couldn't come because
yeah,
they're doing big Christmas shows, but I think it's there's never a perfect time.
yeah,
You gotta kind of just pick it, and I think LDI is going to be in this time slot for a while because of F1.
yeah, you're right. If you could help me, give a nice little poke to Matthias because he promised to come on, and then he's always busy, and I know you
Oh,
keep
let's
him
do
really
that.
busy, but I want to get him on. I think he's a brilliant guy. He's obviously somebody
Hmm.
that people would like to hear from. I've actually had people request me to get Matthias on, and
Okay,
so give him a poke.
we'll,
Give him a
we'll do
poke.
that. That's a
Yeah.
2024 goal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd love to get Matthias on. I think it'd be really interesting. Cool.
Cool.
Well, I appreciate you, Eric, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that stuff. And hopefully I get to see you soon too.
Thank you, Marcel. Let's do it.
All right, my friend. See ya. Well, hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Marcel. How about yourself?
I'm okay. Merry Christmas. And
Merry Christmas to you as well.
before I screw it up, is it Dan or Daniel? Because I've seen both.
Daniel is preferred. My dad's name
Okay.
is Dan, and I had a best friend's name that was Dan, and it just got confusing. So Daniel works the best.
Then forever you shall be known as Daniel.
Great.
Most people like you are pretty sort of meh about it. Like you don't really get upset or anything. I have a friend whose name is Michael, and God forbid I call him Mike. I mean, it's like the end of the earth. He's like, I don't call you Mark. I don't call, and I'm like, okay, sorry, you are Michael. So,
That's right. Forever ingrained as Michael. That's right.
exactly. Well, I mean, believe it or not, as much as I offend some people, I try hard not to usually, you know, I generally try to call people by the name they want, unless we get into all those pronouns and stuff, and then it gets a little weird. But
That's right.
anyways, yeah. So, good Christmas, presumably.
Absolutely. Yeah. No complaints for me. It's always kind of one of those times to rest and reset, but you're always rushing around to see family. So grateful for the opportunity to see family that we did, a little bit of a break. And now we're diving into the New Year celebration and into a great 2024.
Yeah, I mean our industry, you talk about that little break, and our industry tries really hard to check out at this time, but it's so hard. I mean, there's just so many things going on, and we are in the live event space, right? So but I know what, like, one of the things I love and always have for my 30 plus years in business, about this time of year, is sort of that reflection and looking ahead planning and all of that stuff. So, you know, it's a combination of looking backwards and looking forward to see, you know, what can we do better based on what has happened in the past 12 months. And I know for my own business, that's a long list. So, so yeah, I'm sure you're the same, and we're going to hear some of that. But before we do, so first of all, thank you very much for being a sponsor of Geezers of Gear. We appreciate you very much. And I can tell you, without sponsors, I wouldn't be doing this show, not because I make money from it, because I certainly don't, but although I'd like to someday. But it does cover the costs. And, you know, now we have a second mouth to feed, which really is our first mouth to feed, which is Sarah. And, you know, Sarah has taken on a lot of the production. Believe it or not, I've done this entirely by myself. I upload, download, promote, record everything. I had
Do it
been doing
all.
by myself. And so now Sarah has taken on, I don't know, 70% of that work. And I do the easy stuff, like talking to great people. So we do appreciate you, but you're probably one of the lesser known sponsors that we have. Give me an elevator pitch on who is Stratum. What do you do?
Absolutely. So we're a boutique production company located in the Midwest, Lincoln, Nebraska specifically. Um, Primarily help event planners and meeting planners host corporate events. We do a little bit as far as venue management and live event music wise, but primarily we stay in that corporate space, really have a passion for just partnering with people and helping them execute memorable events that captivate, communicate, and connect human beings. Because at the end of the day, I think that's really what we exist for in the event space. If we can build a connection, if we can communicate a message really, really well, or if we can captivate an audience, I think that's really what we should all be driven by and motivated by.
I mean, that's a great way to say it. And, you know, I guess one of the things that surprises me a little bit, I didn't really know that there was much of a corporate or convention business in Nebraska. And so are you traveling outside Nebraska a lot, or is it really a vibrant market within Nebraska?
I mean, I wouldn't call it vibrant. I would say it's growing. Lincoln is kind of known as the Silicon Prairie. There's a lot of startups here that are doing well in the tech industry. Omaha is just 50 miles down the road from us. Omaha has a much more vibrant space, but we do well for ourselves in the area. We do travel quite a bit across the United States, North America specifically, but by and large, most of our business is probably within a day's drive of Lincoln. And like I said, we love partnering with people in the Midwest. We align with a lot of those values. We know that business model. So being able to help and support people locally is crucial for our business.
Yeah. Well, I follow you on socials, and I can say that you do some amazing work from the pictures and articles I've read and stuff. And you also have been very active on social media. You also were a company that I noticed coming out of COVID just seemed to have better ideas than a lot of other businesses who sort of kind of creeped out of COVID. You kind of went boom out of COVID and really seemed to have a game plan. Was that by accident, or?
I mean, I don't think anything's by accident. I think that we really set ourselves up for success in 2020. This is something I tell people still to this day is I'm thankful for 2020. As difficult
Me
as that
too.
was, as challenging as that was, it made me a better business owner. It made me a better just overall technician. There's so many good things that have come out of that. Although it was a bad situation, I think that we were able to actually grow our company through that year, which is,
Wow,
I mean,
that's impressive.
yeah, it's not a standard or a common thing that you hear. So I think just applying a lot of intentionality to who we want to service, having a good product or if not a great product to be able to offer to somebody, and just continue to plan and move forward. I mean, I think a lot of what 2020 was spent for me specifically as the owner was strategizing and building like, okay, this is going to end at some point. It's
Yeah.
how do we come out of this and how do we not fall flat on our face in doing that?
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and I'm glad you said that because so many companies, most companies in our industry, will look back at 2020 and say, "Oh my God, that was the worst time ever." And one of the problems I had during that period of time was with the people who just took it as downtime. And I'm not judging anyone. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or whatever, but in my opinion, if you're a business owner or a salesperson or a technician or a programmer, board operator, whatever, upskill. Use that time to learn
Absolutely.
another console, to learn another language, to teach your children something, whatever it is, but find something productive to do with an incredible opportunity for a business that has no time to do anything, right? We're always busy. And so, you had this sort of pocket of time where you could do anything you wanted. And so many people chose, you know, Netflix. And honestly, I just think that was wasted time in that situation. So
Oh, I would wholeheartedly agree. I think the thing that was beautiful about what our industry did in 2020 is that a lot of the training became free. There
yeah,
were so many resources put out there. I mean, the opportunity to learn in that
yeah,
year was, I mean, the risk tolerance or the barrier to entry was nothing. You didn't have to
yeah,
pay to go learn how to program on a Grand MA because ACT waived those fees for the year.
yeah,
There were
yeah,
all of this free training. So to your point, I think it is very interesting how a lot of people did maybe neglect that downtime as
yeah,
okay, let's take a breath when they could have been utilizing some of that time to just
yeah.
maybe sharpen their skills a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And how about, using that time to learn to break things or to fail, like try things that you wouldn't try when you're slammed busy, but now you can go out and try those things and nobody cares if you fail at this point. Like big deal, I tried something, I looked stupid, move on to the next thing. I know some really stupid ones that I won't bring up right now, but there were some really weird pivots and stuff that didn't do very well. And I'm sure those people would look back and go, you know what? I tried something, it didn't work. And that's how I look
Absolutely.
at it too, by the way. So
Yeah. Sure.
fast forwarding here a little bit. So, I'm sure like everyone else, 2021 was sort of that coming out year when business started coming back. 2022 went nuts. And then 2023, I would assume for your business was similarly crazy to 2022. And because you're so much more focused on corporate, it probably took a little bit longer to get to that mayhem. Like concert touring and stuff got real big in 21 and 22. I think corporate took a little longer to come out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we stabilized a lot more in 2023 than we did in 2022. 2022 was, I mean, revenue wise, I think we six had a multiple of six as far as growth revenue wise. So that
Jesus.
was just an absolute crazy growth year for us. And then this year we haven't seen that same growth. We've seen growth, but it's not been the running and gunning that we saw of 2022. So I think it has taken more time. I think people have kind of leveled off as far as their desire to host events.
Yeah.
I think they're being more strategic about it. I think that there's a lot of pieces that are being considered now, instead of, hey, let's just rush back to get people back in a room. Let's put some thought into this, whether that is the concert and touring or the corporate space. Both those spaces have, in my opinion and my perspective, have taken a little bit of a different stance this year, as far as let's do this well, let's get it out there, create something incredible, instead of just seeing how many arenas we can hit or how many ballrooms we can fit in.
Yeah. So, and by the way, that's not uncommon. What you just said. Like I have spoken to many companies who say that 23 was just crazy, a record year, biggest ever, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, people have said either we lost a little bit off 22 or we gained a little bit on 22, but it was a very similar year to 2022, except much more organized and probably more profitable, because you weren't just, I don't care what it costs, we got to get the gear here. I don't care what that guy costs that I need on the show. I need a guy, or I need 10 guys or whatever.
Right, exactly.
This year got a little more normalized, similar revenue, but much more normalized from a standpoint of operations and costs and stuff. But so as you were planning for 2023, and now as you look back on 2023, would you say that it was better than expected, worse than expected, or as expected?
I think that there were a lot of moments in our company specifically that show it as better as expected. We were able to improve a lot of our process as a company, and get more of the right people ingrained into our company and our culture that are going to, in the end, pay off for our end users and our clients. So I think that that's a lot of what we focused on, and a lot of, as I reflect back, dollars matter, of course, but what about the process and the building, right? I think that I take a little bit of a different philosophy to building a company, as far as I'm not so concerned about what was done this year, while that's important. What about building something so next year we can be incredible, the year after that, the year after that, the year after that? So I think it's better than expected from my perspective, in a lot of different ways, rather than revenue.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're obviously very focused on the quality of the product that you're putting out, and
Yes.
and that's also being growth focused. Like if we put out a great quality product, people are going to use us more and more into the future.
Yes.
So whether it's your own business or the industry, what would your 2024 expectations be? Would you be expecting more growth? Would you expect things to drop a little bit or a lot, and or just pretty much to stay flat on what happened in 2023?
I mean, some of the venues that we manage are booked way more in 2024 than they were in 2023. So I think
Really?
that we are, I guess we're anticipating a lot of growth again in 2024. I think the thing that we have to maybe consider is we're going into an election year, which it doesn't matter where you land on that. There's always turmoil, and there's always some risk involved with that. So I think early projections on my side, from just, again, my perspective and what we see, is that 2024 could be another big growth year, for us specifically, but I think that the industry as a whole could grow again. I think 2023 was kind of that reset year, a lot of settling in, and now people are going to look at, okay, how can we engage and improve on what we've built upon, and get out there more, and be just in the public eye more, or however that looks.
Yeah, 24 is a real interesting year, and by interesting I mean screwed up, because not just the election, but the potential of recession, this looming recession that we've been talking about for a year, but geopolitical stuff too. I've been paying a lot of attention to some of the things that are going on in Europe and Asia, and obviously two different wars that are being battled right now. So, that all has an impact, probably not so much on a local market like Lincoln, Nebraska, but certainly for some of those companies that are utilizing your services in that local market, may be impacted with their European offices or somewhere else in the world, or freight costs, or sort of that downstream effect of having two wars and all kinds of political unrest and other issues going on in the world. Um, so for 2024, give me a big prediction and anything, the sky's going to fall, you know, we're going to get our first woman president
Yeah,
elected,
I, that's a really good question, actually. I mean, I to the point of the looming recession, as unfortunate as it is, I think that there's a lot of that's going to come into play in this next year. So maybe the sky is going to fall. I think the key for a lot of people is to not focus on that and to focus on improving what you can control. Right? I mean, I think that that's a lot of the mistake that people make is they're so concerned with what's outside. And if they were to just take a moment and focus on how they can improve their skills, I mean, this carries over from the conversation we just had a couple minutes ago. If we could just improve and continue to focus, I think a lot of things that I look at is if we talk about recession, I've studied history a lot. If we go back to the 20s and 30s, the one thing that grew a lot was entertainment, right?
Mhm.
Because even in a downturn, there has to be entertainment involved. And I think so many people don't look at that as an option, and they just want to throw in the towel and be like, oh man, well, the sky is falling. I better just call it quits too, instead of saying, no, there's an opportunity here. How can we actually um, help people make it through this in a way that makes them smile or improves their life in any
Yeah,
capacity?
you're so right. And I've always said that. Like I remember, I've been 20 years ago or more talking to people about the fact that no matter what's happening in a local economy, if the right show comes through or whatever, everyone's going. And I always used Mexico City as an example. Like I remember, and it had to probably be in the 90s or something, which, I don't know how old you are, but probably not much older than that. But Madonna did a concert in Mexico City, and it was like 100,000 people. And these are people who don't have nice cars, who don't make much money, who don't eat fancy food or whatever. But when it comes to entertainment, they'll buy a nice bottle of tequila and they'll go to a Madonna concert, and it doesn't matter what it costs, right? They figure it out. They find the money and they go and they entertain themselves, so
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
I think that is uh, such a lasting truth that we can go into this year for. And I mean, honestly, I hope I'm wrong because the impact of a recession actually hitting, I mean, that could be ugly in a lot of ways. But to your point, if the right show comes in, if you're doing the right things, you're going to be able to entertain people and you're going to be able to continue to move forward.
Even on the corporate stuff though that you do, like when there's a recession, a couple of things that can be positive also happen. One is that companies look to take other companies lunch, and so they'll be
Absolutely.
out there pawning their wares and making sure their team is dialed in, and they've shown their latest products and everything. Um, but also, you start focusing on what's most important to your business specifically, and building on those things. And yes, certainly you can look at cutting budgets and going, oh my god, we better tighten our belt, this is going to be a tough year. And one of the first things that go is marketing costs and things like meetings, and trade shows and all of those corporate sort of I don't know what you would call it, voluntary expenses or expenses that are not
Yeah.
necessarily things that you absolutely have to do, right?
Right.
So,
Well, and I think that there are some people that will do just the opposite and see that as an opportunity to continue to grow. And hey, we still need to go and engage with our client base, but let's just do it in a smarter way. Let's instead of spending $100,000 on AV, let's spend 25,000 and
yeah,
get creative with it. Yeah.
yeah. Any thoughts on like a prediction for a product trend or a sort of something new that's going to come out that's going to change the world
Man,
in our
I don't
industry?
even. Yeah, I haven't had a lot of time to actually sit down and think about that. I've been a busy business owner, so there's not been a lot of consideration with that. I'm going to be interested to see how immersive sound continues to evolve. I think the
Yeah.
Sphere opening up this year and a lot of eyes being focused on how that works and that immersive experience. I think more energy is going to start to get pushed into that area. Obviously, I'm a lighting guy by trade. That's kind of how I grew up into this industry. So any new lighting fixtures that come out, I'm always amazed by. But at the end of the day, it's still just a light with a lens at the end of it. It's faster, it's brighter, it's whatever it may be. So
Did you go
I'd
LDI?
be interested to see. I did not make it to LDI this year. We had
Because
a
there
couple of
is a
large
trend.
shows that week.
Yeah, there was a trend at LDI. I wasn't there either, but I've talked to a lot of people about it. And one of the big trends is this lumens per pound concept. Lights are getting smaller and lighter all of a sudden. And so Martin came out with something called a Mach 1, which is like, I'm going to probably misquote this, but I think it's 9 pounds. It's like 4.5 kilos or 4 kilos, 9 or 10 pounds.
Wow.
And oh God, I don't remember the lumens, but it's bright. Like it's bright like a Mac Aura almost, right? Really nice features. Tiny, like really, really tiny. And they make this 4-bar thing that you can mount in all kinds of different ways. And really, really cool and very inexpensive. Like something like $2,000 retail for it, right?
Wow.
So those are going to just sell by the tens of thousands because
they will.
For stuff like what you do, you can pop lights in everywhere, right? And it's small, it's light, it's easy, pretty painless. A bunch of other companies did similar things where they came out with smaller fixtures that are still really bright. And so I see that as being a continuing trend. Like we went bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger for a while. It's got to be 50,000 lumens. Ours is 75,000 lumens,
Right.
And I mean, it's okay if you need to light a building 2 miles away or something, but you know, when you're lighting a trade show booth or a corporate meeting or a ballroom or something, you don't need 75,000 lumen fixtures, right? You need reliable, small, easy, so I'm seeing a lot more of that stuff. Personally, I think there's going to be a lot more wireless battery stuff coming out with better batteries, longer life on it, because life has been an issue. And that fits into the trend of smaller and less power and more efficient and all that stuff. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Last question. So you're a sponsor, you support this podcast. Who would you like to see on it that either you've already seen once and want them back, or maybe somebody that you haven't seen yet?
I'm pretty sure, I think it might've been 2020. So Christian Jackson, is actually, I learned so much from his YouTube channel when I first started. Much like this podcast, I think that there's a lot of lessons that I was able to take on and learn by listening to this podcast. I think Christian Jackson is one of those people. I mean, he kind of flies under the radar a little bit, but he is such a incredible programmer, and more so, he teaches so much. Like he's willing to share his knowledge to no end, and I think that would be another interesting guest to have on.
Well, and he's sort of the OG YouTuber in our industry too. Like nobody really got into YouTube and did what he's done. And I don't remember, he's got like, I don't know, 100,000 followers or something on YouTube. It's crazy. But yeah, that'd be a great one. I wouldn't say I've forgotten about Christian, but when he came on, he laughed because he was, I think at that time, the youngest person we'd ever had on the podcast. So now he's a little bit older. We'll have to get him on again.
Absolutely. Some more experience, some more insight. He'd be able to add a lot of value, I think. Yeah.
How many shows you got to do for New Year's?
We actually only have 3 shows for New Year's. So not anything crazy, but then we kick off right in January with a lot of larger corporate shows that we do every year. So it's kind of that breath and we exhale as we go into New Year's, and then start sprinting right away at the beginning of January.
Rest is over. Yeah.
That's right. It is over. It was good while it lasted.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Daniel, so much for taking a minute to do this with me. And again, we appreciate you very much being a sponsor of Geezers of Gear, and look forward to doing lots of cool stuff next year too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be able to chat with you. Like I said, love supporting a podcast that has given me so much value. So thank you.
I appreciate that. All right, my friend.
All right. See ya.
Mr. Ben, how are you?
Hey, good morning, or good afternoon, I suppose, at this point, right?
It is, yeah. So Ben is actually recording this with me on a Sunday and on New Year's Eve. So you're a superstar for doing that. We were actually going to record during the week, and Ben
We
had a
were.
bit of a blowout in his home.
Well, fortunately, it wasn't my home. So I spent
Oh.
last week deep in the heart of Southwest Texas, where my father-in-law lives, in a town that's so small. It's on the Guadalupe River, and it's such a small town that there's no convenient hotels. So when going to visit him, we did a VRBO of I call it a fishing shack, but it was, it was a 3-bedroom home, to be fair.
Yeah.
Small, single story, 3-bedroom home, right on the Guadalupe River. It was very nice, part of a compound.
Yeah.
And it was so cold in Texas for the past few days that the well pump froze. So we had no water when we, what day is today? Sunday, right? So we had, on Friday morning and Saturday morning, we had no water in the house. From probably sometime around 3 a.m. until around 1 p.m. when it got warm enough that the well pump thawed and we had water again for a while.
Yikes.
So I think we had planned to do this on Friday, and it was just a bit too much while trying to make sure.
No, I get it. I get it completely.
All those exciting things you go through at a time.
Yeah. So
thank you for your flexibility and for delaying your watching of, I think, is it Baltimore and Miami coming up in 20 minutes?
It is, yeah. It's a huge game,
Sunday.
Really, whoever wins this game leads the AFC and puts themselves in a pretty good position. So it's a huge game, and it's also MVP status. Like, basically, people are saying it's either Tua or it's Lamar Jackson, whoever wins the game, kind of thing. But we'll see. I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think
exciting time for a South Florida resident.
It really is, for once. I mean, we've got a hockey team that's winning. We've got a football team that's winning. I don't know anything about baseball or soccer, so I couldn't tell you what they're doing. The Heat, I think, suck. I'm not sure, but
whether your soccer team is winning or not, you certainly have a ticket draw.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's you know what?
I have jersey sales aren't doing too bad either.
I have a friend who goes to those games, the Inter, whatever it's called, Inter Miami, and he said ever since they got him, tickets went from $40 to $400. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, man. I didn't even know we had a soccer crowd here, but I guess with all the South American people and stuff, we're bound to. And all it took was bringing in, the biggest player in the world or whatever, arguably, I guess.
The ownership group, the player, you got it all. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So before we get into, I'm just going to ask you 3 questions, but before we get into that, first of all, I wanted to applaud you for your leadership and your, just stewardship of just the ideas. And, I talk to you a lot and stuff, but the things that you've done with ACT this year, you kind of started the year telling me we want to evolve a little bit. We want to grow. We want to do some things differently. We don't want to be known as a lighting company. You changed your name to ACT Entertainment. You've changed your logo. And you went out and got a huge audio brand. You've bought a couple of companies that are sort of outside the sort of center of lighting.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's been an incredible year for ACT.
It's been an exciting time, and I have to applaud our team for doing a great job. As you mentioned, we began a distribution agreement with PK Sound, and manufactured in your hometown, Calgary, Alberta. Calgary, Alberta. Sorry, I was trying to say Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I tripped on my tongue there.
That's all right.
Anyway, great brand, Jeremy James and his group, and then Ralph Mastrangelo, who joined us after a storied career. Ralph, those people where you can walk into an arena anywhere in the world, and he's going to know somebody front of house. He's an amazing guy, and really looking forward to. We began last year, but it was kind of a soft beginning. We had them at LDI with us. This is the year we're really launching together, and I'm really excited about that. And then, as you mentioned, we acquired TV One, which is the manufacturer of the TV One line of products, and also Green Hippo. So then I think we finished that about 27 days ago. So again, 2024. We're a very different company going into 2024 than we were going into 2023.
Absolutely. No, I mean, these are all really amazing moves. I don't know much about TV One, but you know, Green Hippo, obviously, a huge product line, and really great addition to, you know, not only your lighting products, but your control products. I mean, obviously, when you look at MA and Ayrton and a lot of the other stuff that you have,
MDG, Robert Juliet,
right? But what's missing, you know, is exactly what you went out and got, and so no, I think it's excellent. And so I guess some of this stuff, well, PK specifically, probably Ultimate Support, I guess, which is also relatively new.
Ultimate Support was an acquisition in 2022.
Yeah. Oh, so I guess PK, really their coming out party is NAMM. With you,
it'll be NAMM.
LDI isn't really an audio show as much as some people would argue it is.
We were together at AES in New York, I think, in November or October. I can't remember, but really, NAMM is the coming out party. We'll have a full play and have our team there ready to talk to people.
Really exciting. So just to get into this, really, it's just 3 questions that I'm looking at. And so first, for our industry, you know, I know 2022 was an insane year. Everyone that I spoke to, record years, you know, just absolutely blew it up. Biggest year they've ever had, yada, yada, yada. And really, most people were just trying to get back to 2019 numbers. And then all of a sudden, you know, it was just this massive year. I've heard from a lot of companies, some who have actually come on this interview with me, but I've heard from a lot of companies that 23 represented a bit of the same, but sort of a hangover too. Like, you know, they expected to be 10 or 15% up or 20% up, and they were 5% down or flat. So, you know, I'm not asking for your sales. I know you guys are a private company, but you know, your outlook on sort of the industry, what 2023 meant in the industry from a revenue standpoint.
I think 2023 was just a really strange year, and part of it depended on specifically wherein the industry you operate, right? Obviously, we had what I refer to as the Hollywood strikes, right? So you had the WGA and the SAG strikes. And so obviously I say Hollywood, not geographically, but the part of the industry that records film and TV. You know, so any rental company or any event company that had not even a concentration, but let's say, you know, I was talking to the CEO of one of the top 3 rental companies, and he was saying, you know, 20% of their business came from Hollywood, right? So, you know, think about lopping 20% off of your company. And, you know, it was, what was it? It was May through November, right? So, you know, however many months that is in math, you had that much of the year where, you know, for some people it was 20%, for some people it was 99%, right? So you had a lot of strange things, but then you had people who maybe with a high concentration in concert touring. And I think 2023 was, you know, the greatest concert touring year in history until 2024, which we're expecting, you know, if you look at the data that Live Nation is putting out and we talk to our customers, you know, we had a huge surge of orders coming in right at the end of the year, all looking for delivery towards the end of the first quarter, right? So sometime in March, we have, you know, I think there's not a single rental company you can pick up the phone and talk to right now who's not going to tell you they're booked for next summer or they're booked for the spring. And I think those companies also honestly did fairly well in 2023, right? So, you know, sure, as you know, if I put on my manufacturer hat for a second, or I think about the distribution area of our business, you know, we're obviously coming out of COVID, there was a growth rate of, you know, 300% or 500% or whatever it was, because everything dropped 50% going in, you know, because of COVID, right? So, you know, the velocity of that growth rate is, you know, the industry is not going to grow that much again in any given year, but we are definitely back to what we consider a normalized growth pattern, whether that's, you know, you look at 2012-ish to, you know, March of 2020. And I think if you smooth out the curve of COVID, we've actually beaten that. The industry has beaten that over the last, you know, 4+ years at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I would
really expect that to continue for, again, I don't know that the Hollywood strike ending is going to cause, I don't think we're going to come storming out of the gate, but as that industry starts to restart, and remember, all those studios are real estate companies now, right?
Yeah.
That's really what, so as that part of the industry starts to restart again, and then, again, put on the manufacturer hat for a second, you think about what's going on in the rest of the world, right? And I know you have a worldwide audience, right? We're very, we're very North American centric in the guest list sometimes, but I think you have a lot of listeners. If you look at what's going on, in Saudi Arabia and other parts, that's going to be a huge hotbed of activity for the next, for the next, I was going to say for the next decade, but probably for the next forever.
Yeah.
Right? So, I think anyone who's manufacturing equipment, anyone who's manufacturing entertainment technology, should continue to be quite excited and bullish about the industry and the growth in the industry.
I completely agree with you. And you mentioned Live Nation, and I've mentioned it many times on here, but
Sure.
but they have this really cool approach where Rapinoe put out an article saying that his customers, or his artists, basically have 10 million followers on social media. All he has to do is sell tickets to 5% of those people. And, and he sells out a tour. And, when you look at the math like that, it's pretty incredible. So what they're really trying to do is start tapping, sort of multimedia type of approach where you're tying into the social media and tying into, between streaming and live events and all of those different things. You're just kind of trying to bunch it all and have a thread that goes through the whole thing. So it's pretty interesting. It's I kept thinking the bottom was going to fall out a little bit, and it hasn't. And now I've actually sort of changed my opinion to where I don't think it will. I think there's a larger appetite for live events than what we're currently filling. And
it's huge. Again, it's, we all, if you wake up in the morning and turn on the news, right? And I think that was another part of the story of 2023 is we certainly spent months. I think thinking back, it feels like it was the middle of the year, right? Where everyone, economists were doing their best to convince us that there was going to be a recession, right? And the reality is, we're still waiting for the recession that we've been promised for the last 3 years, right? And again, I'm not an economist. It's way outside my purview and area of expertise to understand what's going on there. But I think that had a real hangover on some of the purchasing decision making in our industry, right? If you're reading the news July-ish, August-ish, you really weren't feeling good about waking up.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't usually pay attention to it's an election year and all of those types of things. Like, I don't think our industry follows a lot of that stuff. I'll tell you what's scaring the shit out of me right now. And I follow some of this geopolitics stuff because my business really moves equipment around the world. Like, we're not dealing with a North American market. We're dealing with Asian stuff coming into North American stuff going into Europe, etc. We're moving stuff around. And so what these Houthis are doing right now, like in the Suez Canal and the Red Sea and stuff, is scaring the shit out of me, because like I've already heard container prices are already 3x between Asia and Europe because they have to travel like thousands of miles additional. And, they're bringing...
And the war in Ukraine is blocking the trains.
Right. Another problem. Yeah. So, I mean, this stuff definitely has a cost. And if you go back to freight shortages and these supply and demand issues that we ran into in 2020, 2021, that's a beating on our industry. Like, that's tough.
Remember, I am literally the worst predictor in the history of time. I'm the one who said COVID was a 90-day problem and we all needed to focus on day 91. Right?
I was right there with you, buddy.
So
I was as big a jackass as you were on that one. Wiseman thought it was a few weeks. He was even worse. We
tag him
failed.
somewhere.
No, I mean, none of us can
yeah.
predict this stuff.
Listen.
None of us can predict this stuff. You can just sort of plan for the worst and groove with the best if you can. So 2024,
Sorry,
it sounds to me like you're expecting growth in 24, but probably regular growth, like back to sort of, the 2017 to 2018, 2018 to 2019, like
again,
10, 12%
is it
in the
6%,
industry.
8%, 50%,
Yeah.
6%, 8%, 20%, 22%,
Not 300%.
whatever the number's going to be, the number's going to be, right?
Yeah.
The market is growing. There's more live events. There's more installations that need entertainment technology. There's all kinds of, there's construction projects. There's all kinds of things happening around the world. And, that's only going to continue as time goes on.
Yeah. On Wiseman recorded a podcast, which I think comes out next week or something.
Okay.
And he was talking about somebody in their finance team or something coming in and saying, John, we're going to need, to add another 12 million to the budget next year or whatever. Are you going to get that? Where are we going to get that from? And he's like, the hell out of my office. Just get out of my office. What's going to happen is going to happen. That's what's going to happen. I can't just pretend that there's another 12 million when I have no idea what's coming. There could be another war. There could be 14 wars. I have no idea. So
listen, it's our job. It's our job to try to predict the future.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll tell you
what we do.
If you came within, 10 or 12% of your forecast this year, of your budgeted forecast this year, I think, damn, you did good, Right. And I've talked to a lot of people who have, and I've talked to some people who were wildly off either direction. Like they thought they were going to lose money and they made money. Yeah. So and give me a big prediction. Give me a big, bold prediction. It could be somebody who's going to dust off their retirement stuff and come back out and tour. It could be a market trend, product trend. What are you thinking? Something wild.
COVID is a 90-day problem. That's my prediction. I've sworn off predictions. Yeah. I think the world is going to adopt automated line array systems that move in the air, and you don't have to drop them to reposition them. I think the world's going to go. I'm a huge fan of your prediction.
There you go.
I'm a huge fan.
There you go. You can pay me later.
Yeah. There you go.
And so, bonus question: give me a guest I should get on this podcast.
Oh, wow! I wasn't prepared
Besides
for that question. Yeah, right. Well, I'm finally old enough to be a geezer. So
yeah. We should do another one and just talk for a while about what's going on.
I will think about that, and I will send you an email.
Well, that's no good for a podcast. What does an email do to the people who are sitting here listening to this going, why can't Ben come up with a name?
It gives them something more. It gives them something more interesting to think about.
How about Ralph?
Okay. It's a good idea.
I'd love to get Ralph on. That would be fun. And we don't even have to talk about MA consoles. We can talk about art, photographs, cars, race cars, racing drivers.
All right.
I don't care.
I'll give him a call and I'll see.
All right. All right, my friend. Well, Happy New Year to you. I appreciate you taking the time out on a Sunday on New Year's Eve to do this. And,
Happy New Year to you as well. And
hope you get to shower before you eat tonight. Yeah. No, I appreciate it, buddy.
All right.
Have an amazing time, and we'll chat next year.
All right. Stay safe. Enjoy.
See you, pal.
Bye.
You're in the enviable position of being in the same company I am, and I can't answer my own questions. So, seeing that you're the next in command, you can be the one who's up to bat and answering these. So, it's going to be funny asking questions about your viewpoints of our company when I'm in the company every day. So, maybe the questions that I'm going to ask you, which are going to be more related to, how the industry is doing and stuff, let's maybe keep them more industry related, not necessarily specific to GearSource. But I mean, aside from that, so we're recording this, people are going to hear this a couple days after Christmas, at least. I mean, the people who hear it the first day are going to hear it a couple days after Christmas. And then, obviously in perpetuity, but as we're recording it, we're a couple of days before Christmas right now. And so I think you're traveling, right? For the holiday?
I am. I'm doing a lot of traveling, actually. I'm driving down. I live in Northern California, so we're driving down with my family and my dogs to Los Angeles to hang out with my in-laws for a couple of days, and then from there we're flying to Denver to hang out with my family for a few days, and then flying back to LA and driving back up.
Holy shite!
Yeah, lots
That's
of travel.
a lot. That's a lot.
Uh-huh.
You know, you got this thing called Southwest Airlines, right? You can get from like Northern California to Southern California. It's really fast.
You can, but then you can't take the dogs, and then I have to put them in.
Oh,
I have to board them or do something with them. We have
right.
some friends here that typically would watch them, but they're not going to be here for the holidays, so we have to.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
just taking them with them.
that's a lot to ask people over the holidays, I guess. Hey,
It
yeah,
is.
do you mind walking my dogs and feeding them every day and stuff? Don't you live on
Yep.
a bunch of land though? Can't you just let them loose and they can go out and
Well,
fend
that's
for
what they do,
themselves?
and the people that watch them are actually they live in our guest house on our property, and they also have a dog, so it's kind of a
Oh,
back and forth thing. So it wouldn't be a huge deal for them if they were around, but
yeah,
yeah,
they're going away.
yeah.
They were probably like, we were going to ask you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's fun. I'm actually boring as hell staying at home and having a whole bunch of family over. So we're cooking up a storm. And today I was dumb enough to go 2 days before Christmas to Costco and Trader Joe's, both in the same morning. And I got to tell you, I don't know if it's a sign of the economy or luck or I don't know what the hell it is, but there was nobody there. It was pretty
I
dead.
think I think luck. You're before the weekend. You were smart to get in early and do it before Saturday.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Well, I know there's a lot of people listening right now that probably wouldn't accuse me of being smart having done that, but I think I just got lucky. I think I picked the right time and got in, got out, and it was super easy. It was crazy. I was like,
Must have been Karen's doing. Certainly wasn't yours.
I think so because like even, Costco, like how often, I don't know if you go to Costco, but how often do you go in, get all your stuff and then walk straight up to an empty cashier
Never.
and you're
Never.
like we were parked in, got our stuff, got out in 15 minutes.
Although I do sometimes kind of play a game when I go to Costco. I make it a goal to see how few items I can actually leave with, and it usually is way more than I intended. But
It always is. Yeah, like I go in for toilet paper and come out with home theater seating or
right.
a washer and dryer or something, It's like, why do I have all this stuff?
I
You
need a million bananas and
yeah, right, enough bananas for a village. Yeah, no, it's crazy, but it's tempting. I mean, everything looks appealing. The one that's getting me these days, and we talked about this earlier, but the televisions. I mean, the televisions are just out of control now. Like it's crazy. Like I walk in and right as you walk in the door, and trust me, I have enough TVs. I don't need any, but you see this like 85-inch OLED TV for like $3,000 or something. And I'm going, what? Like I need that thing so bad. I got to have it. I got no place to put it.
Makes you question why you need an LED wall in the industry. No, not really. I just made a bunch of people cringe.
Well, pretty soon LG is going to have, TVs that are as big as LED walls, I guess. I don't know. They just keep getting bigger and nicer. And like these OLED screens, the picture's amazing. And it's like $3,000. And then you can get, like, I think I saw a 75-inch today for $599. A 75-inch television.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, at some point you run into the limitation of like just what can you fit in a car or in your door. So then you get a consumer version of an LED wall. You just get, a seamless monitor that comes in a box that's, 18 by 18 and it's got 20 panels in it.
Yeah. I mean, and then maybe they're just going to roll up like, wrapping paper and you can just roll the thing out onto a wall and boom, you've got a.
I've seen that actually, that it is like
really?
it's a flexible thing. It's, it was a like a test product R&D type deal, but
I remember LG had something that they called something wall. But they were just using it for photographs. It was like a photo frame thing, but it was like 2 or 3 millimeters thick and like unbelievable resolution. Just a beautiful, beautiful picture. Like I was looking at it going, oh my God, like beautiful, ridiculous.
Well, it's like the wallpaper that's an LED light. It's like a big OLED LED fixture.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
I don't know why you want your whole wall to glow, but maybe.
Well, why not?
I guess
because you can.
You can see it. I could see a ceiling doing it. That would make more sense. But you just walk in and staring at light seems painful.
Yeah. Hey, we haven't really spoken, and certainly haven't spoken on a podcast about I know you were at LDI, I wasn't. What do you think were like a couple of the hot products at the show?
That's interesting. I was only there for a short period, and I had several meetings and stuff. So I definitely walked the floor and I saw some things. I didn't get like full deep demos on some of the things that I would have liked to have seen, but the stuff that I did see that caught my eye was number one, Clay Packy has a new, I think they call it, I'm trying to remember the name. It's MIDI B or something like that, but it's like a miniature profile moving head or a spot. I don't think it has shutters, but it's a mini spot, but it's literally, it weighs 18 pounds and it's like not the size of your laptop. It's itty bitty, but it was bright and it was actually a good quality of light and had some interesting features behind it. I have no idea what the price point is, but that was interesting. Obviously, that's not going to have a lot of place other than maybe some scenic things in like a rock and roll environment.
I don't know. That's a trend right now. That's a trend right now. The smaller size and I kept hearing this thing of like lumens per pound or something.
That's an interesting metric.
Lightweight is the other big one right now. Like you said, that one's 18 pounds, and that Mac 1 is like, what is it, 10 pounds or something?
Yeah, something like that. That obviously was a hit of the show, for good reason. It's a really good looking fixture, and it definitely is going to take the place of what the Mac Aura used to. It's got the Fresnel lens on it. It looks really good. The light's good. It's pretty bright.
Yeah,
it's got different configurations.
Like a couple grand.
Yeah. I think dealer is 15 or 1600 or something like that.
Supposed to talk about dealer.
Yeah, sorry. It's cheap.
Yeah.
But it's those were interesting. Another one that I thought was interesting that I tried to find, but I didn't actually see in person. Corey Easterbrook told me that there are a couple of fixtures out now that have electronic frost. That there's some Acme fixtures that have it and Chauvet fixtures that have it, and it's the same tech behind like the window frost where you turn it on and it makes it like transparent or whatever. Yeah, so it's like a variable frost that's electronically controlled rather than having a disc or anything. So I really wanted to see that, but it was like by the time I learned that, it was hour 27 of the last day. So
I haven't heard that one. I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty interesting idea. Whether or not it's reliable and has good image optics is another question, and obviously open to opinion. But it's a cool idea, and certainly could open the doors to a lot of things.
Well, the good news is that technology must be coming down in cost then, because I know I looked at it one time for a conference room, and I mean, it was ridiculously expensive. It was like obscene cost, right? And obviously variable frost in a fixture, we're talking about a piece of glass that might be that big or whatever, but still.
The controller is probably more expensive than the actual diffusion part.
But I mean, think of what it would do for, obviously the window covering industry would be screwed because nobody would buy blinds anymore. What for? Or, any of those things, blinds, drapes, whatever you call the roll down shades, that would go away. You don't need it. That's cool. I didn't hear about that one. I'm going to have to check that out.
I'm curious to see it in person at some point, although I don't really get fixture demos because I don't work at a rental company anymore. So I'll have to make a point to do that.
we don't often get to touch fixtures. They just kind of magically fly through this software of ours. So speaking of which, this is an interesting and unique episode that we're doing where we've got all of our sponsors on one episode. So we can't sit here and talk for an hour because it's going to then be 10 hours long or something. So speaking of 2023 specifically this year, do you think that overall the year was better than expected, worse than expected, or as expected? So a year ago you were sitting thinking, what's next year going to look like? And I don't necessarily mean GearSource specifically. I mean, it could be the used market, the used equipment market, the availability of used gear, pricing on used gear, etc. So what do you think?
Well, when I think about that, I think about sort of what the craziness of 2022 was and the insanity of what was going on with supply and demand and with the shows happening at any time of year on top of each other, 27 at a time, because
Right.
everybody was trying to get back from COVID. So I feel like 2023 really relaxed out of that some, and the second half of the year started to normalize and get back to sort of the typical cadence of the industry, at least from what I saw. And I think that's a good expectation for 2024 and beyond, is that we will get back to a lot of those sort of more normal calendars and more normal schedules. Certainly business was still good. I've heard from many people that, they had killer years and excuse me, did some pretty amazing numbers on things. In the used gear market specifically, because of that normalization of supply and demand, we really saw an uptick. Coming out of COVID, a lot of people had the assumption that the used gear market was killing it because of the opportunity and the potential during COVID and shortly after. But
isn't it funny how that happens though, Brad? Like, people, like, I remember last year, even in 2021, people like, oh my God, you're in such a perfect place. But the problem with our business or our industry, our part of the industry, is that it is supply and demand, and we always have those at the wrong times. So we've got loads of supply and no demand, which was COVID 2020. And then we've got loads of demand and no supply, which was 2021. And then, 2022 kind of was still crazy, but it normalized a little bit where we had some supply and some demand and did okay. And then this year, the demand, well, I don't know, you might have been ready to say this, but the demand seemed to go down a little bit because the supply went up so much on the supplier side, on the new gear side.
Yeah, well, I would say, I wouldn't say that it went up so much or the demand went way down that it was like below expected levels. I would say that it went down to the norm, right? To what you would typically see.
Yeah.
2022 was nuts. Everybody was trying to get everything because you couldn't. So the demand was, through the roof. But 2023 really brought that back to reasonable levels, and people were making more, I'll say, intentional purchases and maybe more thoughtful purchases rather than just like send money, give me light. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
It was more intentional and it was more methodical. We did see some prices normalize on things as well. So like, the CL5 that was so crazy through all of COVID, plus the DM7 came out, and that kind of killed the extreme pricing
almost
on CL5.
Almost half. Now it's 40%.
It's down back to 20 to 30 grand for a CL5, which is much more where you would expect it to be rather than the 45 or whatever it was for a couple of years. I think, business was strong. There's a lot of potential in what things are doing, but it's more back to predictable valuations and predictable needs, which is really what you need for, a healthy business and healthy growth within an industry.
So your expectations for 2024, again, growth, drop, or stay flat?
I think it's going to grow on the equipment side of the industry. And I think that that's driven largely by two things. So number one is, again, with that sort of thoughtful purchasing plan, that people are going to make more investments rather than just grab whatever they possibly can because they have to have it. So you're going to see more people going back more to, large volume purchases where they can, or making really strategic decisions about what equipment they're purchasing. But with some of that on the used gear market comes with, more thought into when can I get used? When does it make sense to get used? Not just I have to buy used because I can't get new. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's going to come.
It's funny you say that because I've spoken to lots of manufacturers who say one of the cool things that COVID did is it made people plan more, which means that manufacturers didn't necessarily have to just have all the inventory in the world all the time just in case somebody got a show, right? Like there were actually forecasts being delivered and things like that. Like, hey, we're going to need this many in Q1, this many in Q2. And of course, there's always the emergency buy or whatever. But for the most part, it got much more organized over the past couple of years as a result.
Yeah, we'll see if that sticks. That's always the if you let people off the leash, then they will go back to old bad habits. So hopefully it stays that way. But it's certainly a perk.
So give me a big 2024 prediction and pick the category, pick the whatever you want, but it could be a product trend, a market trend, a Beatles reunion tour? Give me a big prediction.
Sure. Well, I'm a lighting guy, so I'll keep it in the lighting world because that's what I actually know about and don't just make things up with. But I think what we've seen since the launch of really the Stylos, but last year the success of the Cobra fixture from Ayrton, and for anybody who doesn't know, those are both RGB laser sourced fixtures. And while there are some challenges specifically in the US around variances for those things, as I understand it, the Cobra just was an absolute killer deal for Ayrton and one of the best selling fixtures they've ever had, even with the challenges within the US. So I think that trend is going to start to push into other manufacturers. We've seen the IP trend that's happened over the last 3 or 4 years that basically everybody has a complete IP portfolio. But I think we're now starting to see the viability and the market adoption for the next thing past LED. And I think it's going to be lasers. Like it has to be, in my mind, at least.
Yeah. And, I think maybe our industry needs to rally together a little bit, just like with COVID, when Strickland always said the problem is instead of a big battleship, we're pulling up to Congress in a bunch of 100 canoes, right? And it's the same problem when you get to something like this variance. Hey, we want to somehow lobby the FDA to get rid of this crazy variance in the US that shouldn't be there, because it's not like we're, taking lasers that are cutting people's arms off and stuff and aiming them at people like weapons. These are safe fixtures. They're no less safe than any of the other lighting fixtures that we're selling. And in some cases, a Sharpie is more dangerous than any of the laser fixtures out there. So,
and until this became a thing, it was never a need to have that conversation, right? So it's not a surprise that it never happened because there was no reason, right? Laser projectors aren't pointing at people; they're pointing at a wall or at a screen or.
You certainly could. Right? There's no law against it.
Yeah. That's true.
You can scan an audience with a 25K laser or a laser video projector, and nobody goes to jail. Nobody gets fined. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's goofy and it needs to be fixed, but I think it's going to take more than just Claypaky, more than just Ayrton. It's going to take the industry sort of getting together and maybe hiring a lobbyist and getting in there and getting it changed. It's probably something that nobody's looking at because nobody screamed loud enough, right?
Yeah. Well, as I understand it today, to buy any of those fixtures in the US now, so originally it was like you couldn't buy them. You had to demo them, and then there had to be a factory representative or whatever. So they got around those things. But now, as I understand it, to purchase, you have to have gone through the certification to hold a variance, and you have to take a safety test kind of thing. So it's like a permit basically. And then in order to have a legal transaction as a seller, you have to show proof that the buyer has those things. How you report those, I don't know who's overseeing that, but
and the challenge for these manufacturers is they can sell them in Europe, but the problem is the US is more than 50% of the market for most of these companies. So Europe ain't going to cut it. Like even if it's a really successful Ayrton fixture, selling it in Europe, to make it viable as a line of product like what Claypaky have built, Claypaky's a smaller company and they can probably get by having a full line like that Skylos thing. I think is kind of cool. I don't know if it's bright enough. Right. I haven't seen one in person, but and then they've got the mini Stylos that somebody we talked about the Stylos and the variances on a podcast recently, and the Claypaky distributor from Canada sent me a message on Facebook or something and said, "Hey Marcel, just to clarify, in Canada, we don't need variances, but for the US, we have this, I think it's called a mini Stylos or something, and it comes in below the requirements. So even though it's a laser fixture, you don't have to have a variance, but I don't know how bright that is. Like I know the number used to be 4.9 milliwatts. I'm sure you don't have a 4.9 milliwatt laser in that thing because that would suck.
Yeah, no, I have no idea what it is. I mean, I've seen that fixture, just the body of it. It's pretty small. It's smaller than a Sharpie. Yeah. So I have no idea what it does in terms of power or features or any of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's a bold prediction. I must say, I probably don't agree with you. I think
it might be a bit premature. I think
if you look
people are going to start to plan for it now.
5 years
but
down
then
the road.
In 2025 or 2026, that's going to be sort of the next big step.
No, I think it absolutely should happen. It's a beautiful light source, and I think it's got a place. But I think they have to get around the variants first, and that's going to take a couple of years, I think, potentially. So I don't know, maybe somebody's working on it, and I'm going to get another correction via email or something saying, hey, Marcel, you idiot, the variance is being dropped next week, So
it'll be Michael Strickland's new side project.
Yeah. And so I've got a bonus question for you. Who would you like to see us bring on Geezers of Gear?
Ooh.
Besides you or your dogs or...
Right. Well, you've had so many people, it's hard to keep track, but...
We have had a few.
Have you ever had... Now I'm blanking on his name. Richard, High-End Richard.
Oh, Bellevue. Yeah,
yes.
You know what?
Yeah, Richard Bellevue.
It's a good reminder because I've talked to Richard so many times about coming on, and he was involved in some legal discussions and didn't want to come on a podcast because he wants to be able to speak openly and honestly and everything else. But I would think that he's through all of that now. So that's a great Sarah. Noted. We got to get with Richard Bellevue. He'd be an amazing guest, actually. One of the smartest product
He's got so much
there
insight to things and was so involved in the history of how lighting became what it is today.
Yeah. Another one along that same vein, but younger and fresher or newer in the industry or whatever you want to call it, is Matthias from Elation. Mm-hmm. And I've spoken with Matthias. He promises he's going to do it. He's always busy. They keep launching friggin' new fixtures over there at Elation. So, yeah.
Have you ever had Yvonne on? I mean, he's harder because he doesn't he's not as strong in English as he is in French, certainly. But.
Well, and we ended up talking half the podcast about racing, so
I'm sure.
Yeah, Yvonne is for those who don't know, the founder of Ayrton and huge racing fan. Named the company after Ayrton Senna, and so yeah, him and I had a pleasant talk. Yvonne is very passionate about lighting and about his fixtures and stuff, but yeah, he's a little hard to pull stuff out of occasionally, and his language is a bit tough, but I really enjoyed it. I actually interviewed him at LDI 5 years ago. I don't know what year it was, but he was great. No. And I'll tell you what, we're not a huge industry. I'm already doing do-overs. Like I've had loads of people on multiple times. Chris McMean was on again last week, and I've had Chris McMean on before. It's about interesting people, interesting stories. It doesn't matter if it's somebody that we've already had. So, but we'll definitely reach out to Richard Bellevue. That's a good one.
Have you ever had Brad Schiller? He's with Martin. But he's a similar. He's sort of like Matthias.
No. I know Brad really well, but I can't remember if I've had him on. I don't think I have, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's like Rob Koenig, who I had last week, Metallica's LD. I just assumed I had him on before. Like I almost remembered in my own head talking to him, and so I was talking to him, and I was like, yeah, we got to get so and so or so, and he's like, yeah. Like he was kind of grumpy because I wasn't inviting him on, and I'm like, holy shit, you've never been on the podcast? And he goes, no. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get that booked. So that was a great discussion. Yeah, we talked last week. So anyways, Brad, I appreciate you taking a few minutes and doing this with me. And
absolutely.
I appreciate your insight. And yeah, so this will be out, I think, either next week or the following week. I'm not sure.
Well, thanks to everybody listening, and happy holidays. And if it's not holidays when you listen to this, good luck.
See you, buddy.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, hello, Rick McKinney from Mainlight.
Hello, Marcel.
How you doing,
buddy?
How are
you? Yeah, I'm good. How about you?
I'm alive. I somehow survived 2023, the year of the God, I don't even know what to call it. Like I can think of some really bad words, but we'll try and keep it clean because it's the holiday season.
Well,
right?
Happy New Year. Hopefully 2024 will be great for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's sort of why we're doing this, is really to get a gauge from some people, I think, who really know what the industry's doing, what it's done this past year, what it might do next year. I talk a lot about that on my podcast. I had John Wiseman on well, I think it's yesterday by the time this gets posted, or was it last week? I don't know. Anyways, it was a week ago probably, or yesterday. But I had John Wiseman on episode 213. And if you don't know John, John's sort of at the top of the food chain of account reps or account execs for the lighting touring business. And he had a pretty good feel for things. And then George Masick from, well, actually, he won't be on till next week. So now I'm confused with all of my timing. But George Masick from Claypaky, you know, I love getting people like that on the podcast and just talking to them about where they think the industry's going.
Oh yeah, it's always good to get everybody's perspective for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you guys, I mean, one of the great reasons, one of the things about Mainlight that's so different than other companies, most other companies, is the majority of your business is dry hire rentals, right? Like, or if not all
Yes,
of
sir.
your business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's majority for sure. It's
Yeah.
what we're known for. You know, we've been doing dry hire strictly for 20 plus years at this point. You know,
Yeah.
it's been a good thing for us.
And you've been there over
And
20 years, right?
I have been with the company for 24 years, and as of
Wow.
November in 2023. Yeah, it's
Wow.
been a pleasure. It's been a great place to work.
Who's a tougher boss, Mike Cannon or Idis?
You know, they both have their good points, and you know, everybody's, you know, I get along with just about everybody that I work with. I put my nose to the grind and do what I need to do, and that always just seems to work out well for me. And I get no flack from from anybody in most
Yeah.
cases,
Well, I
Idis
mean,
or Michael. So
I don't think you could pick two different bosses either, you
I'll
know?
tell you, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. They are definitely on different sides of the spectrum.
So I have a quick funny Idis story. So I didn't know Idis, and you know, I came from Canada. I went straight into Martin. I worked for Martin for a number of years. Martin never did any business with Idis because he was always a high-end shop at the time. And I left Martin and went to work for High End for a little while. And Craig Burrows took me around the Northeast to introduce me to some customers, and Idis was one of them. And so we decided to play golf. And we're on the first tee, and you know Idis's sense of humor, of course, right? So, you know, I'm doing my little waggle with the driver, and I go to pull the driver back, and every time I went to pull the driver back, he gave me a little squawk, you know. You know?
Oh yes.
And I didn't know that Idis had Tourette's. And so finally I turn around and I'm like, would you shut the fuck up already? Like, I'm trying to hit the golf ball, damn it. You know? And he's like, oh, did I make noise? You know, and I'm positive to this day, and I've never asked him, but I'm positive to this day he was messing with me. And he was doing it on purpose.
There is a very good possibility of that. You know, there's nobody that was any more of a trickster than Idis for sure.
Oh,
And
my
I'm
God.
sure we're not done with it at this point in our lives either. He'll be back around.
Oh, hell yeah. Does he ever stop in to visit or anything?
You know, to be honest with you, I work remotely most of the
Oh,
time.
do you?
So if there was a stop by, I don't see it because I write business out of all four offices. And
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I have no need to be in one office. So he
So
just,
Rick,
if he does stop in, I haven't seen much of it.
yeah. I miss the guy. I call him every once in a while
I do
just
too.
to yell about politics. But so what's your role and title in the company? I know it's all very different now that it's under the Cannon Development Group or whatever the heck it's called. But and it's obviously grown tremendously over the past couple of years. What is it you do?
Well, I'm the national rental manager. I've been that for about the last 2 years since we've expanded to 4 locations.
Yeah.
We have a location, of course, the first where I started and where the
Yeah.
company started in Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah.
Then we opened our shop in Las Vegas, which was closer to Michael and where he does his business. So we opened that one next, and then we opened the Nashville shop, and then just this year opened the Teterboro, New Jersey location. So we've got a pretty widespread. Uh, we're pretty widespread now, which is kind of what I always wanted to be, because it's like it was constantly shipping to the West Coast and things like
Yeah.
that in the past. And it was just like, gosh, it would be so nice just to have somewhere central, you know, somewhere on the West Coast where we could service these customers.
Yeah. Well,
And it's
I
been a
would
win-win situation, 100% since
I would assume the Vegas office like grew like a weed immediately, and probably even to, I don't know if it's your biggest office, but it's probably pretty damn close, I would guess.
it's doing really well.
Yeah.
Well, we're an East Coast company for the most part to start, so that's where a lot of our business, our core business, was from.
Yeah.
But of course, by adding the Vegas location, all those customers that we dealt with on the West Coast, it makes it so much easier for them. So
Yeah.
it increased
Yeah.
exponentially. So all
Yeah.
good.
No, it makes huge sense, and like you said, it's closer to home for Canon. So no, it's good. I've enjoyed watching the company grow, and again, I love Itis. I miss the guy, but I'm so impressed and happy to see what Michael has done with Mainlight. I think it's a great brand. I think it's a great company. I'm happy to see that all the key people are still in it. You know, yourself and
Yes.
and Gio and Randy, and I mean, the key players are still involved, and that's great because it doesn't always
Yeah.
happen.
Michael definitely put a breath of life back into the company for sure.
That's
There
good.
is no doubt about it. It's been great since he's taken over.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to keep you here all day. I really just want to get into a few questions. And you're one of, as I said, one of our key sponsors. And I've asked all the other sponsors the same questions and got all kinds of answers. But there's kind of a line, a thread that goes between the answers that tells me that everybody's probably right. And so the first question, or the first series of questions, I guess, is regarding 2023. And this can be Mainlight. This can be your view of the industry from Mainlight's set of glasses. But the business overall in 2023, better than expected, worse than expected, or just like you thought it would be?
I'm gonna have to say that it was pretty much as expected. Due to all the weirdness that happened in 2022, and the fact that that we business was picking up in 2022, but you never knew when the job was gonna cancel early. If a tour went out
Right.
the door, if it were gonna come back in 4 weeks instead of 8. That
Yeah.
was the what we were dealing with in 2022.
Yeah.
It was definitely much less of a fear in 2023 whenever we sent out a job that it wasn't going to cancel. So I'm going to say things were as expected. I was expecting things to go much better than 2022.
Yeah.
2022 was good in comparison, of course, to 2021, but
Yeah.
we did have that still a lot of questions going on,
Yeah.
and people still getting sick from COVID, and that was
Yeah.
canceling a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
So that was a major part of the
But but
2023 is
do you
just
think
knowing that stuff was coming back.
as an industry we grew in 23
I
over
do. I
22?
really, I do. Just because we're also just towards the end of the year starting to see more corporate come back,
Yeah.
more trade show stuff. So this is all important to our industry, which was kind of lost for the last 3 years for the
Yeah,
most
that's
part.
true.
So
Well, and you never
it's
know.
good.
I
It's
mean,
good to see that come back, and I think 2024 is going to be even greater just because of that aspect of the business coming back.
but you know what? One thing our industry doesn't seem to pay a lot of attention to, but I've had, and again, you're the fifth sponsor now that we've talked to about this stuff. But I've had a lot of people concerned about the election year, the E word, about the R word, recession. Not concerned like tours are going to cancel or anything, but it could impact things like what you just said, the corporate stuff that's been coming back. It
And
wouldn't take
yeah,
much for wars and all of these crazy geopolitical things that we've got going on in the world to sort of upset what's happening.
it certainly could, and interest rates are not fun to deal with right now too.
That's
That's
true
all. That's
too.
also something that we have to consider. There might not be as much purchasing next year just because of the interest rates.
But that could help you. That could play right into
Yeah,
your hands as COVID did,
that could, but
you know?
that's where Mainlight's going to help out a lot of people is whenever companies have reached their capex, et cetera.
Yeah.
We're going
We're
to
going to
have the
get it.
equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's what we're here to help. So It's always.
Is
I'm looking
supply
forward to
chain
2024.
has supply chain still been an issue for you guys in 23, or that's pretty much settled?
Beginning of the year, we were definitely seeing it, but in the first 3 to 4 months, and then the last 6 months, it's gotten a lot better in
Yeah.
2023 with getting the parts we need to keep the lights out working, things like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it's much better the second half of the year.
That's good. So you're expecting this year more of the same, or do you think 24 is going to be wildly different? Do you think it's going to keep growing? Is it going to be flat?
I think if it's going to grow, it's going to grow a little bit. I think there's going to be larger tours this year that didn't happen last year because people are more comfortable with it.
Yeah,
So I think there's going to be more stadium tours next year, more and
that's
bigger
wild.
acts coming out.
That's wild
So
because the number of stadium tours blows my mind. I talk about it all the time on my podcast. Like the fact that Motley Crue is doing stadiums,
hmm
and The Weeknd and all of these acts that to me are arena acts are out filling stadiums right now. There's such an appetite for live music.
There certainly is. There certainly is an appetite
Comedians are
for it,
starting to do
and that's
stadiums.
great for our industry. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, we had a great run with a customer of ours and a comedian this past year. So
it's insane. Comedians are doing stadiums.
business is all there.
Yeah, yeah, and apparently, like if you listen to Live Nation, it's growing. Like they think that there's a huge amount of untapped potential still to grow for live events. So, hey, I mean, there's going to continue
Bring it
to be a
on.
shortage of equipment this year. Apparently, so Mainlight is going to capitalize on that, I'm guessing.
We're
Um,
here to help for sure.
so give me a big prediction. Anything, a tour that might get a band getting put back together, a market trend like lights coming from outer space. I don't know, but
You, you,
anything.
you know, maybe we could get something to happen with like Virgin Atlantic and ELO to come out. Where we do the first show in outer space, where we build an arena in outer space and we float it out there, and we have Richard Branson fly people out to it, and
That's
we have
incredible.
like one of the most spectacular ELO shows ever. That's the
That
kind of
sounds
stuff that I
fun.
would like to see.
That sounds fun. I don't know if I'd book a
No, but
ticket, but
But for real, I like the old school bands like Electric Light, or I'd love to see Jeff Lynne bring it back out again, and
that's cool.
with the production it deserves, something like that.
I speaking of old school bands, I just started listening to a podcast that was recommended to me. Where the heck is it? I wasn't recommended to me. I was listening to Rick Rubin talking somewhere, and Rick Rubin mentioned this podcast called "A History of Rock Music in 500 Songs." It's incredible. It's a
That sounds really cool.
British guy named Andrew Hickey, and like every episode, like I just listened to the episode about Hey Jude, and it goes into way more than Hey Jude, but I don't know that much Beatles history, because I was never a massive Beatles fan, but it's so interesting. Like I learned so much in a 90-minute podcast or whatever.
Yeah,
But
send me the link. I'd like to check that out
yeah, I will. I'll send it to
for
you.
sure.
So yeah, I mean, what about product trends? Anything? Do you see anything evolving, changing? Like I'll give you one thing that I've noticed, and I wasn't at LDI, but I've paid a lot of attention to what went on at LDI, and there's this new thing where it's lumens per pound or lumens per kilogram or whatever, where lights are getting smaller and lighter. Like that little Mac, which I'm sure you'll have thousands of them in your inventory in
Oh
no
yeah,
time.
and that's kind of what I was thinking. Is yeah, it's all the product trend. Like the Martin Mac one, and it's getting as much punch as you can out of a small fixture. There's a lot of large fixtures with a lot of lumens out there right now. They've stepped it up in the LED market for sure.
Yeah.
But now we need to. It's now the small fixture that people are looking for with that punch. So I think that's going to be an important trend for the.
What about IP ratings? Like, do you see us getting close to a point where people won't buy fixtures that aren't IP?
We're kind of in that boat where, of course, a majority of our inventory is being pushed in that direction because of what we do in dry hire. You want to make sure that the equipment stays in good shape.
Yeah.
And the IP rated fixtures are the way to do it. It makes total sense. It all really depends on, where you're doing your shows mostly.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it makes you so much more flexible and versatile too, because like if you have, for example, let's say you're down to your last 12 lights in your shop and they're IP fixtures, you can use IP fixtures indoors, but you can't use non-IP fixtures outdoors
True.
without covering
Yeah, and that's
garbage bags
kind
or
of the
something.
the reasoning we had behind whenever we decided to jump heavier into IP into 2023
Yeah.
and 2022, of course.
Yeah. And
Um,
now some of the stuff coming out either from Elation or even Chauvet, certainly Ayrton, IP fixtures are not as expensive as they were. Like they used to be 30% more than a non-IP fixture. They're not as heavy as they were. They used
Not
to
as
be
heavy. That's
so much heavier.
the weight is the huge thing, and that's what kept us out of the IP market originally. Was we had a few fixtures, but my God, whenever you're putting them on the trusses to test them and things, it's just like, well, we can't have too many of these. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
with the weights coming down, that's probably the most important part, in my opinion,
Yeah.
was the fact that we were able to
Huge.
get the weights down.
Yeah, huge.
Yes.
Do you have any role in the selection of equipment? Like is it by committee? Are you part of a committee that determines?
Essentially, yes. We get requests all the time for stuff that we don't have, and we keep a list of the items that people are asking for, and as that list grows, we look at that list seriously as what to consider for our next purchase.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
That's cool.
I'm a big part of what we purchase in the future, just
Yeah,
based
cool.
on requests. Yeah.
Yeah, good. You live in Delaware still?
I live in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I
Oh, okay.
live just southwest of Lancaster, PA.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, on the
And do you
farmland.
have to travel to the shops an awful lot?
I go into the Delaware office once a month, the New Jersey office every other month, hit Nashville 2 or 3 times, 4 times a year,
Yeah.
and Vegas 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah. Oh, that
But
makes sense.
mostly work here remotely from home.
Well, you guys have such a great team. I mean, it's not like Nashville needs you there or whatever, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
nice that you can go in.
it's all about putting the right people in place and making
Yeah.
sure that the job gets done on all
Yeah.
levels, which is what Mainlight does. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to be working for such a great company.
It is a great company, and
It is.
I'm happy that they're one of our sponsors. Because when they're not our sponsor anymore, then I'll just talk shit about Canon and I'll say Mainlight's a shitty company. They used to be good. I remember when they were good, but they're not good anymore. So
Always
a
be good.
bonus question for you, and I don't know if you've ever heard our podcast, but we get lighting designers on, front of house engineers, managers, production managers, tour managers, company owners, account execs, all kinds of people. Anyone you'd like to see us bring on to the podcast?
Have you ever had Mike Finicaro on? I don't believe you have you?
No.
He would be great. He's a good guy, great personality, good person to talk to. I would recommend Mike Finicaro.
The only reason I know Mike Finn is through Cosmo posting thousands of pictures of him and Mike. And
He's a great guy.
if you could do me a favor and just shoot me back an email with his email address, that would be super helpful. And we'll
For
just
sure.
reach out to him and see if he's interested in jumping on. That would be really
Absolutely.
cool. Thanks for that suggestion. Well, Happy New Year, and thanks for taking the time to do this. We appreciate you jumping in and doing it, and we appreciate Mainlight very much. And
Happy New Year, and
yeah.
thank you.
All right, my friend. See ya.
All right, Marcel. Well, we
Cheers.
appreciate it. Take
Yeah.
care.
Thanks, man.
All right. Bye.